Welcome to Project Command. I'm Captain Peter Eunice, and on today's episode, we're talking about ChatGPT for firefighters. But first, if you're enjoying this podcast, it really helps us if you like, subscribe, or share this episode or any episode that you found valuable with a coworker or a friend who you think might appreciate it. Here at Project Command, we're committed to helping fire departments deliver better projects. And if you've got a question or a topic you'd like to hear us cover, send us an email at projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com. That's projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com. We'll do our best to answer it either by email or on air in a future episode. So please, help us spread the word and keep the mission moving forward. Now let's get to the episode. So guys, this is an episode that I've been really excited to do. I started using ChatGPT in 2023 for pretty basic stuff, and I was really interested in it. So I signed up for this 4-month online certificate program that was hosted by Vanderbilt University, and my mind was blown. And since then, I've been a big proponent of fire departments and just the fire service more broadly adopting AI. And so, what I want to do today is give you everything you need to get started, maybe answer some of your questions, and hopefully, if you're not using it yet, or maybe you've used it a little bit and you're not very comfortable, I want to take some of the anxiety or the uncertainty away. Just cover some basic stuff that you need to know to get started. And if you're already using it, hopefully, I can give you some good tips or maybe just some useful prompts that you can use and maybe some use cases. So, before we get started, though, I do want to put in like just a quick cautionary note here, and I feel like I have to do this. And it's important because AI is great, and ChatGPT is great, but you do have to be careful using it. And so, just a couple things to think about. The first one is you really want to know your department's policy on AI use. And sometimes I've found that because it's a newer technology, just in the last few years, really, some departments don't even have policies on it. So in that case, you'd really want to go to your IT people or maybe your HR people and just get clarification from them. But really, you want to know your department's policy and follow it when you're using it for work stuff. The other one is you really don't want to put any personal or confidential I guess sensitive personal or confidential information into AI because it's not private. There's no expectation of privacy. So that's something that you need to know. And with that in mind, it's also good to remember that when you start using AI, you're going to have that wow factor where you're like, whoa, it's like having a genius in your phone. And that's kind of true, but AI can make mistakes, and so, don't get so blown away by the kind of the wow factor that you don't check behind AI or that you take its word as or take what it says as gospel because it definitely can make mistakes, or they're called hallucinations in the AI world, and that can definitely happen. So whatever you have AI or ChatGPT or whatever use or create for you, you really want to go back and take a look at it and make sure it's accurate, and it didn't, make a mistake or just make something up, which it will do. So the first thing I want you to know is what is an LLM or large language model? Now, think about it like this. So you know how when you're sending a text on your cell phone and you write something like, "Hey, I'm gonna go to the," and then your phone suggests words to fill in like what the next word should be, and it'll say park or gym, and it basically it predicts what the next word you're going to say is. So that's an example of a language model. So what's a large language model? Well, imagine if we took that language model from your phone, the one that's going to predict the next word in your sentence, and we had it read millions of documents, books, words, articles, computer code, looking at pictures, you name it. We took that language model, opened its head, and poured, a massive chunk of the knowledge from the internet into its head. Well, that would be a large language model. So essentially, you have a prediction model, which is going to predict the next word to say based off of all that knowledge that we crammed in its head. So what is an LLM when we talk about AI more broadly? Well, simply put, when you open ChatGPT, you are now interacting with an LLM, a large language model. So whether you do that off of an app on your phone or whether you go to chatgpt.com and start talking to it, you are now interacting with an LLM. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. So now that we know that we're interacting with an LLM or ChatGPT, what do we need to know about how to interact with it? Well, there's two main things you need to know when it comes to how to interact with an LLM, and that is parameters and prompt. So the parameters is just a way of saying any context or background that you give this large language model. And the prompt is like what you want it to do. So imagine that we wanted to create a training plan for, you're a Recruit Academy instructor and you need to create a training overview on the IFSTA textbook chapter on ladders or whatever. You might say something like, you are the training officer for a fire department with 10 fire stations and 200 firefighters. Write a one-page training overview on the IFSTA chapter on ladders. Write it at the college student level and cite any references to the IFSTA textbook. So in that prompt, the parameters would be the details that you gave it, like who it is, you are the training officer, or the background, or I guess the context rather, for a fire department with this many fire stations and this many firefighters. So it's just like the information you gave to provide context for the prompt, which is what you're about to ask it to do. So the prompt in this example, the part of this statement that was the prompt would be write a one-page training overview on the IFSTA chapter on ladders. So again, we have parameters, which is all the background, all the context, and the prompt, which is what you want this AI or large language model or ChatGPT, I said the same thing three different ways, what you want it to do. Okay, so that's one way to interact, which is you basically tell it exactly what you want it to do. You say, you are the training officer of this fire department, and this is what I want you to make. Okay, so that's the prompt. Now, the other way I want you to know about is something called iterative prompting, or as I like to say, a conversation. And so that would go something like this. Like, let's take the same example. I want that same thing. I want that one-page training overview on the ISTA chapter on ladders. I might say, hey, ChatGPT, I need to create a training overview for the IFSTA chapter on ladders. What questions do you need me to answer for you to create a great training overview on the chapter on ladders? And then it would say something like, I need the size of your department, or I need how many students you want to teach this to, or I need the length. And so it'll tell you, like, these are the things I need to give you a really good training overview. And so then you would say, okay, well, here's the answers to your 4 questions. What else do you think should go in this? Is there anything I'm missing? And it would say, well, I would consider putting in this. And so with the example I'm giving you here is that we're going to end up with the same thing at the end, which is to say we're going to end up with that training overview. But when you have that conversation or that iterative prompting, what we're doing is we're kind of dialing in specifically what we want, and we're having that dialogue with the LLM, and it's saying like, okay, this is what's missing, or consider this, or add this in. So what I find is if you just need something quick, just go with a prompt. And if you want something that's like you really want it to be a good finished product, I would recommend going with that conversational approach because it just gives you an opportunity to hone in more specifically on what you want. Okay, so a couple other things that I want to cover here are, and this is actually one of my favorite features. With ChatGPT specifically, you can upload pictures, screenshots, or files directly into ChatGPT. So I'm going to pull up my phone right now and take a look so I can tell you exactly how the screen looks when you are looking at the ChatGPT app. So like, let's say you go to the Apple App Store, you download ChatGPT, you sign up for your account, do a sign up a little login account. Now you're in the app. You're going to have essentially a black screen and a text bar at the bottom, and it says ask anything in the text bar. Okay, now on the left-hand side, there's a little plus button, and on the right-hand side, there's a little microphone icon and then a white circle with a squiggly line in it. Now, if you hit that plus button, it allows you to drop pictures or files from your phone or different like web searches in directly into ChatGPT. Now, on the other side, that microphone, if you hit that microphone button, now you can talk directly into it and it will transcribe what you're saying. So, and this is like something I actually would really like to do. You hit that microphone button and you just give this, long prompt to AI and you say, hey, all right, I'm going to tell you everything I need this training plan to have. And you pace around and you say whatever's on your mind. And then you say, okay, now organize that this way. And then the last thing is that white circle with the squiggly line. If you hit this, it actually takes you into, and I'm not exactly sure what the right terminology is, but essentially you're going to go into a back and forth conversation with the model, and you can go in and pick the voice you want it to have, and it's going to like actually respond back and forth with you. So you say something, and then a voice will come out, and it'll say something back, and you're actually like having a real conversation. So just different things I want you to be aware of in how you interact with the LLMs. And actually, one thing I should have said at the beginning here, what I'm trying to do in this particular podcast is give you, I mean, obviously I just gave you some specifics about ChatGPT, but I'm going to speak in general terms about like the way you engage with ChatGPT. And the reason I'm going to do that is because there are a bunch of different models out there. There's Gemini and there's Grok and ChatGPT and a bunch more. And regardless of which one you have, or regardless of what updates come out, the basic fundamentals are going to be the same. And so that's what I'm trying to give you in this episode, so that even if a new model comes out or a new upgrade comes out with ChatGPT, which they do regularly, you'll still feel comfortable using it. The foundation is the same. Okay, so let me give you a few tips on how to get good results. And before I do that, sometimes you don't need perfect results. Sometimes you just need something quick. So don't feel like every time you say something to ChatGPT, it has to be this like extremely well crafted, perfect prompt. Sometimes you just need something quick, like give me 15 names for a project that is fixing um, the training facility, the storage shed at the training facility or whatever. And it'll suggest a bunch of different names and you can just read through it and pick one that you like. And sometimes you really need like a high quality output. And so in that case, you really want to be specific. When you need a high quality output, you want to be as specific as you possibly can. And another thing, and we talked about this in the parameters part, but you want to tell the AI who it is. And so, that's like when you say you are the training officer for this, size department. And the reason that I like to do that is because, again, it's a predictive model. And so when you tell it who it is, that gives it a ton of context that it can use to formulate a response based off of who you told it is. So if you say you're the training officer, it's going to put together a fire department style training plan. If you say you're a high school teacher, it's going to put together a high school learning plan. If you put together, or if you tell it, you are a PhD student, defending your defending your dissertation, it'll organize it like that. So it's really important to tell it who it is, because that gives it a lot of really valuable context that it can use to formulate a response in the way that you want it. Okay, and the other thing that I want to say here, and this is again kind of going into that iterative prompt or the conversation style, and that is asking follow-up questions. So I think the temptation, and I certainly felt this way when I started using it, the temptation is to kind of see it like it's Google. And so you just ask a question, you get results, and you look through them. But the real value of ChatGPT is, yes, you can search things like on Google, but you can dial it in. You can say things like, hey, what other things am I missing? What should I be searching for? What are some similar concepts? So you can have that dialogue with it, which helps you get closer to, I'm hesitant to say like what you actually want, but sometimes what you ask ChatGPT for is not what you actually want. And sometimes you can get a better sense of what you're really looking for by having that dialogue. Okay. And the last tip to get good results that I'm going to give you is save your good prompts so that you can use them again in the future. So create a little folder on your laptop or your computer at home and just save your best prompts in there. You'd be surprised how often you go back and use them again. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is use cases. So this is important because I think one of the things that is a barrier to people using AI, different LLMs, ChatGPT, is they don't see how they can use it for their job. So I think a lot of firefighters are thinking, the LLM is not going to go put out a fire for me. It's not going to go to the entrapment for me. So there's nothing that I really need it for. And so I want to just go over some broad categories of use cases to just give you a sense of what you can use this technology for. Okay, so the first one that I want to talk about is, and this is, well, let me just tell you, and then I'll get into why I think it's so important. So the first one I want to talk about is document creation and editing. So think about things like writing reports, writing memos, proposals, emails, SOG drafts, training outlines, whatever documents you need to make or edit, this is a great tool for that. So the reason that I think this is so valuable for firefighters is this is something that, first of all, we don't want to do. Firefighters don't want to, I mean, if we wanted to be, English majors and write long reports, we'd have picked a different job. So this is not something that we just like love sitting down and writing these lengthy reports. So there's that. But also, this is a huge, huge, huge time saver for fire officers that are, whether they're in the field or in administration, because it takes one of the things that is the most time consuming, which is like writing and editing long documents, and it makes it extremely quick. Okay, so, and this is probably one of the things that ChatGPT is the best at, and it's the easiest to kind of get going with. So, you can do a couple things here. You can copy paste something that you wrote and drop it into ChatGPT, and you can, so copy paste, then go into the text bar and paste, and then you can say, just put like dot, 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 period, 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 and then write, edit this so that it is professional and has, whatever kind of tone you want, an authoritative tone or sympathetic tone, and it'll edit it and it'll change the tone a little bit and change some words. Or you can say, just edit this for spelling and grammar. Okay, now it's going to go through, change it, adjust the sentence structures if needed. And, or you can give it a bunch of information and you can have it create a proposal or a memo. And you can say, okay, I'm going to upload 2 documents that I want you to review, and based on those 2 documents, I want you to come up with a training outline. So maybe you put in, the information you want to cover in the training outline, and then the next thing you put in is a timeline for the training. You give it those 2 documents, and then you give it some more parameters, and you put in your prompt, and you say, okay, now create this document. Now again, don't put anything that's confidential or sensitive into the LLMs because there's no expectation of privacy. But yes, great for this. So putting in documents and getting it to create things or synthesize 2 documents. Say, hey, take this document and combine it with this document to create a new version. So first brain category I want you to know about, document creation and editing. Okay, now the next one is project planning and management. Now you knew I had to put this one in here because this is a podcast about project management. So it'd be kind of silly if I didn't talk about project planning and management here. But so what I like to do with the project planning and management category is you can develop charters, timelines, you can have it help you come up with different risks or task lists. So you'll remember from our previous episode when we talked about how you build the scope for your project, and the most important step there is going out and collecting requirements. So, you get all your stakeholders and they write things like must be completed in 6 months, must include this, must include that. You can take all those requirements and you can put them into ChatGPT and say, use these requirements and come up with a scope document. Now, you really need to go through and read it afterwards to make sure that scope is correct because that's so important. But this is just an example of how you can take a bunch of inputs and have it create a project document for you. And then, of course, you're going to want to mess with the formatting and kind of make it your own and revise it and all that. But great for stuff like that. And for risks, I really like, just turning on either the conversation mode or the dictation mode and just talking to the LLM and saying, this is the kind of project we're getting ready to do. We're going to be rolling out this kind of software, doing this, doing that. What are some risks that I might not have thought about? So just, and I should say here, this does not replace risk forecasting with your team, because half the value of risk forecasting with your team is getting them to think about this stuff too, so that you have shared ownership over your risks. But the point I'm making here is that this is great for just making sure you didn't miss anything. Like, hey, what did I not think about for this? And it might say, hey, this sounds like there's going to be a legal component to this. You might want to think about, this, and this. So just great for helping you come up with risks that you might not have thought of. Okay, next one, and this is one of my favorites, learning and research. And the reason I like this is because you can take really difficult concepts and so, I don't know, let me think of an example here. Um, let's just take like string theory or some physics concept or whatever. Not that that's, what you would want to learn about, but let's just use it as an example here. You could say, okay, ChatGPT, explain string theory to me like I'm a high school graduate. And then it'll give you here's a high school graduate's understanding of string theory. You read it and you go, okay, that makes sense. ChatGPT, now explain it to me like I'm a second year college student. You read it, like, okay, that makes sense. Now explain it to me like I'm a PhD student in it. And you can just escalate, excuse me, as you get, a better and better understanding of it. And if you're really not grasping it, and I've done this. It sounds silly, but I've done this. You can say, explain this to me like I'm a 10-year-old. And that's just great. And it's also good for research. You can say, explain NFPA 1851 to me in plain terms. And it'll say, hey, this NFPA requirement specifies this, this, and this. So great for learn. And if I'm going to slip this cautionary note in here, double check, fact check, especially when you're getting into specifics like specific NFPA requirements, but great for learning new concepts or doing research on something. Okay, last one I want to talk about is creativity and what I guess we can call like strategic support. And so what I'm talking about here is brainstorming new ideas or having the LLM kind of help you workshop something. So you say, hey, I want to say this is the message I want to get out, but I don't know how to word this. Or, hey, I'm getting ready to have a 2-hour meeting on this topic. What are some ways I can structure this meeting to make sure I cover everything? Or, if you're, you're creating something new, you can say, give me, and actually, I should have said this earlier. Let me jump in and say this really quick before I forget it. ChatGPT and a lot of these other LLMs can create images for you. So again, you're going to want to check with your department on whether you can use these and what your policy says about it, but really great if you're making a logo for something or something like that. Actually, the logo for this podcast was made with ChatGPT, so you can say, give me a logo that has these things in it, and it can create images for you. Or you can say, help me come up with a project name or whatever. So great, great, great tool for coming up with creative ideas or helping you brainstorm and think of things that you might have missed. Okay. The last thing I want to give you is some of my favorite things that I learned in the Vanderbilt Generative AI program. And the first one is a way that you can structure your prompts to get better answers. So and this one specifically I like to do if it's a very complicated thing that I'm asking or it's like a technical process or something like that. And what I'll do is I'll say, I'll say, this is what I want you to, I'll give it the prompt and I'll give it the parameters. I'll say, this is what I want you to do. Now, before you answer or before you give me the output, tell me how you're going to come up with this output. So then what the answer you're going to get, what ChatGPT will say next is, it'll give you an answer and it'll say, this is how I'm going to come up with that answer. First, I'll research this, then I'll research this, then I'll structure this, and then I'll double check this. And what you're doing here is you're forcing the model to use a more holistic approach where it's, kind of you're making it zoom out a little bit and have a more big picture perspective when it gives you your output, or your answer. So great tip. I really like doing this, especially for more complicated prompts. Okay. Another thing I really like is including in my prompt that accuracy is critical. And the reason I like doing this is let's remember that these are predictive models. And so they're predicting what they think the next word in a sentence should be. And sometimes with the model, it'll place a priority on giving an answer versus necessarily an accurate answer. And so I like to include something like, It's critical that all of the information in your answer be accurate. Include at the bottom of this answer all of your references and sources for the data that you cited. All right, the last thing I want to tell you about is using pictures as prompts. And so this is something that I've actually done a lot, and I think it's really, really cool. And so one of the coolest examples that I can think of is last year, my family and I took a vacation to France. And what I would do, like what I did a bunch of times, was take a picture of something and then ask ChatGPT a question about that picture. So, like for example, I had to take the train, and so I was on a platform, and I speak, practically zero French. So I would take a picture of the platform displays that show, which trains are coming to which platforms, and I would say, based off of this picture of the platforms, which one do I need to be on to go to Monaco? Or at a restaurant where there was no English translations for any of the food, I would take a picture of the menu and I would say, translate this menu into English, or pick one of these dishes that has chicken in it. And so you can take pictures of something and use that essentially as your prompt. Now, when you do this, you do want to give some background information also. Think of the picture like it's the prompt. You still need those parameters. So I like to just tell it what it's a picture of at a basic level, and then tell it what you want out of that. So this is a picture of a menu at a restaurant in French. I want to know what it says in English or whatever. So give it the picture and then give it the parameters. But this is a really, 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 really cool way to interact with LLMs. And so just to kind of go through the nuts and bolts of it, when you open the app, you'd see that text bar at the bottom, and you'll see that little plus sign. Hit that and then look for the camera icon. And then you hit that, it'll ask for permission to access your phone's camera. You hit yes, and then take the picture and hit the little blue send button, and it drops it right into the text bar. So this can be a really, really cool way to interact with AI. Okay, well, that's pretty much all the time we have for today, but I just want to close out with a couple final thoughts on using AI, especially in the context of the fire department. And the first thing I'm going to say is just get started. Download the app. Don't worry about getting the paid version. A lot of these apps have a paid version. Just start off with the free version. And if you find that you're using it a lot, then think about doing the paid version, which is, I think, like $20 a month for most of them. I do it, but I strongly recommend that you start off with the free version. And so, yeah, just download the app, get started. And the second thing I'm going to say is the limitation on use cases in the fire department is your imagination. So, and what I mean by that is the more things that I have experimented with using AI, the more I've been really impressed and surprised at the amount of value that AI can deliver to the fire service. And so I've given you a few examples throughout the course of this podcast, but really think about what you specifically do. Think about your job, whether you're the captain of communications or the captain of planning or EMS captain or a battalion chief. Think about what tasks you do, and then think about where AI could potentially step in to help. Or better yet, tell AI what your job is and what you do day to day, and ask it where it could help you out or where it could be a force multiplier. So just get out there, start exploring, start messing around with the technology, and I think you'll be surprised at how quickly you pick it up. Definitely not as intimidating as a lot of people think. So I'd love to hear from you guys on what use cases your department might have for AI or what you're already using it for. And if you have questions about any of our use cases or a question about something we covered on today's episode, feel free to email us at projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com, projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com. That's it for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Project Command. If you found today's episode helpful, share it with someone in your department or your next project team. Every share helps more fire service professionals learn the tools and mindset to deliver stronger, smarter projects. I'm Captain Peter Eunice, and this has been Project Command, bringing command level thinking to every project in the fire service.